In my work as a negotiation trainer, consultant, and professor, I often get asked, how do I teach negotiation skills? Well, if you feel like your department, your team, or even your kids need better negotiation skills, and you think you can help them achieve them, then this video is for you. It's also for you if you're working in a school or university and have been tasked with teaching a negotiation course, but don't have any background in it. Stick around to learn 5 key parts of teaching negotiation skills well. I'm going to start with a little secret. When people ask me how to teach negotiation skills, I often have 2 somewhat bipolar and disparate reactions, almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. If you ask me on a good day, I'm flattered for all the reasons you could imagine. First, it means you think that what I write about and study and teach and do is worth being taught to others. And second, it means that you think I can offer some valuable insights into this. But that's me in my Dr. Jekyll moment. On other days, I'm a bit more like Mr. Hyde, where I have a very negative reaction to the question. On those days, I think to myself, negotiation is a complex, interdisciplinary field. It requires a great deal of study and practice in order to understand and teach. Your question suggests that you think you could just pick this up and teach it when you know almost nothing about it. And frankly, you would never ask one of the world's foremost neuroscientists, or a constitutional law scholar, or a physicist, how do you teach neuroscience? Okay, so with these 2 reactions out of my system, let me share with you the truth. Teaching someone, whether a colleague or a child or a friend, how to negotiate doesn't require a PhD. But to do it well, it requires a lot more than just sharing a few stories from your experience or saying something like,
"Watch me work my magic,"
the next time you're in a car dealer or negotiating a contract at work. There are 5 important steps that can help you. Learn, tell, show, do, and review. The first one is learn. This is simple. Learn as much as you can about negotiation. If you have the time and the financial support to do it, I'd encourage you to take some kind of executive education course or workshop on negotiation. Okay, this is going to sound like a plug. I actually offer these through the Cambridge Negotiation Institute, but it's less about whether you take a class with me or not. There are lots of other courses you can take through local schools or colleges or online. In choosing, though, what course to take, make sure the person who is teaching the course also actually knows something about negotiation. A reality about this topic is that there are a lot of people who teach negotiation, but whose only knowledge really comes from telling stories of their own negotiations. That might be fun, but honestly, it's not the best way to learn.
No.
Similarly, there are a set of people out there who offer negotiation courses who may have studied about negotiation, but they themselves actually haven't been involved in many high-stakes negotiations, either on their own behalf or on behalf of a client, or even as a coach or consultant. So as you think about signing up for a course, check the background and the experience of the person who will be teaching it. When you are signed up for the course, though, you need to be doing 2 things at once. First, of course, absorbing the content. What is being taught here? But second, because you want to teach a topic, you should be watching what the instructors are doing and how they're doing it. In addition to taking the course, you need to be reading some books on negotiation. Books like Getting to Yes, Negotiating Agreement Without Giving In. This book is several decades old, but it is just still a really great primer. I might supplement that with something that is a bit more current as well. With a cognitive framing for understanding negotiation in your head, you're going to be a very different and better place to actually learn from your own negotiation experience. And so this is the second piece of learning. We do learn from our own negotiation experience. The best teachers I know aren't just talking to you about research, and they aren't just telling you stories of their experience. Instead, they're using stories from their experience as a way to teach about the research and apply that research to real-life negotiation contexts. So, with the negotiation framework and a vocabulary firmly implanted, now start to learn from and integrate your own experience. You do this by reviewing each of your negotiations and asking, what did I learn? What did I do well? What could I do differently? And if you do this over time and keep doing it, you'll see that you will improve both as a negotiation expert and as a negotiation teacher.
That is such good news!
Okay, so with learning out of the way, let's move to the teaching experience. The second step is telling. By telling, what I mean is that a good teacher has to convey an effective way of communicating information to the learners. In a classroom, that might be in the form of a short talk or a lecture. But good teaching pedagogy actually explains things with a degree of specificity that is useful to the learner. So saying something like, just try negotiating, you'll learn as you go, isn't actually particularly helpful and actually isn't even necessarily true. There's a fair amount of experience to suggest that negotiators don't necessarily learn from their experience. Instead, they fall victim to something called the fundamental attribution error. This means that when things go well, they say something like,
Wow, wasn't I really great today?
but when things go poorly, they say something like,
Man, those other people are total jerks.
or
Ugh, it was awful. Mercury was in retrograde.
what they don't do is a rigorous job of calling lessons at a really granular and specific level. So when teaching negotiation, you need to tell in a way that is specific and usable and not generic. And this leads to the third important step in teaching, which is showing. So negotiation is informed by theory, but negotiation is not theory. Negotiation involves doing something. And so the third piece of good negotiation is actually showing people how to do it. A lot of the prescription in negotiation is easy to grasp, but it's really hard to know what it looks like. What are the exact words?
What?
So when you say something like set up a good process or make sure you're actively listening, that's great, but what does good active listening look like? What are the exact words someone would use at a negotiation table to establish a good process? Any good negotiation teaching plan will actually show the learners what does it look like. So when I'm teaching in a classroom or in one of my seminars, I will set up a real-life skit where I'll take someone in the class and actually run a demonstration with them. For me, this is my favorite way to teach because it's live and it's unscripted, and it means that my fellow learners can see a real-life example of what it might look like, but they can also critique me live. Many years ago, Roger Fisher, who is the founder of the Harvard Negotiation Project and who co-authored Getting to Yes, and who's one of my mentors, he was asked by a very big New York City company to create a negotiation video so that their team could watch and learn. So Roger was really open to the idea of a negotiation video, but he refused to be part of a scripted video. He said it would just be too discouraging and, oh, by the way, totally unrealistic to those who watched it to see someone kind of pull everything off with great skill.
I have lots of skills that you don't have.
So instead, he suggested the general contours of a simulation be provided to participants and to improv actors who would play the part, and he would also be in the negotiation to model good skills, but without a script. The result was a teaching video where Roger, frankly, isn't always that skillful, but it's such a great tool for teaching.
Give it a whirl, girl.
And so this is the next part of showing. You may want to be teaching negotiation to your kids or your colleagues, but maybe you're not going to be putting a class together. That's fine, because folks also learn by watching what you're doing in your day-to-day negotiations. So be sure to give those whom you want to teach chances to actually see you in action. And remember, if you're telling them to actively listen when you are sitting in their annual review, but not doing it when you're actually negotiating with a client, they are going to notice that. The aphorism, kids learn from what they see, is absolutely correct. Now, I've had the chance to serve on many, many teaching teams when I taught full-time at Harvard Law School. I can remember the first time being a teaching assistant and sitting in a teaching team meeting and noticing that some of the fellow faculty members weren't always following their own advice. That they weren't batting 1,000% wasn't actually particularly troubling to me. As I said, this stuff is really hard to do, and frankly, I more often fail than succeed. What was surprising sometimes was the lack of awareness or reflection about the ways in which they were falling short. So if you want to be a good teacher, strive as much as you can to model what you are teaching and be open and vulnerable enough to admit when you've not lived up to your own best expectations. The fourth and important step for teaching negotiation is what I call do. So now that you've told them, now that you've shown them, now you've got to give your learners a chance to actually do it, to try it out. Depending on the context, what this do looks like can vary. If I'm teaching a formal negotiation course, I will have participants engage in a simulation or role play that allows them to actually practice some of the concepts and skills I've just shared with them. But perhaps if I'm in a coaching environment, or if you find yourself in such an environment, it means giving a real-world assignment for my client to practice. So sometimes I'll say something like, okay,
When is the next meeting you have with the head of sales?
I want you to use that session as a practice for these skills or ideas. If I were a supervisor or manager, I might create a do opportunity by giving the person whom I'm working with a chance to prove themselves on a real, if maybe not high stakes negotiation or part of a negotiation. Sometimes in my negotiation coaching work, I'll create an assignment for someone just to give them some practice. So for example, I might say, okay, so this week, I want you to go into a local store and try to negotiate the price of an item, just to get some experience and feel for what that's like. Okay, I hope you're not horrified by that, but it's actually a good experience.
I think you're brave.
Or I might say something like, this week, I want you to try to actively listen to a colleague whom you ordinarily find to be incredibly annoying and frustrating.
What the hell is the matter with you?
Or this week, I want you to find at least 3 times when you can turn what seems like a purely distributive negotiation into a value-creating mutual gains one.
Okay, this shouldn't be so hard.
So you basically get the drift here. Unlike history, for example, where I can tell you about history and that will suffice to learn it, in negotiation, I actually have to create opportunities for you to do it. And this leads to the 5th important tip for teaching negotiation, what I call review. So in order to consolidate the learning from previous opportunities to do or to practice negotiation, it's important that we have time for structured and purposeful review or debriefing. In my coaching and consulting work, I usually get a chance to speak with a client again and ask them how it went. But before I do that, I actually get them to do some self-review on their own. For example, I might ask them to write down 2 things they did that they think worked for them and why. And then I might ask them to write down 2 things they did that they think they should do differently the next time they negotiate and why. This may seem simple, but it provides a structured review and allows for a consolidation of learning for next time. Now, if I'm outside of a formal class or running a team, I always want to schedule a review and debrief session to consolidate learnings. And when I'm running a meeting like this, I want to be careful that the conversation doesn't turn to how awful the others were and how great we were. That might be nice for the first 2 minutes of post-negotiation locker room talk, but when it comes to learning for the next time, I want to make sure we take a deep dive into the specific moves that we made. What worked? What didn't? What could we do differently next time? Consider NFL's teams, right? At the surface level, it's easy to say, hey, why do they only play 1 game a week? Are they really spending the rest of the week in the gym and practicing? The answer is yes, they are spending the week doing those things. But there is something else they are doing. They are reviewing videos and footage from past games to do a detailed post-mortem. What are they doing that is working? What could they do differently the next time? They look at these videos over and over and over. When I'm teaching negotiation, spending the debrief time and doing it with rigor can really mean the difference between improving or just stagnating. So to recap, if you're interested in teaching negotiation, whether in a formal way by running a class or informally with your team, your kids, your colleagues, follow these 5 steps. Learn, tell, show, do, review. So I've got another video for you that will help you improve your negotiations called How to Improve My Negotiation Skills. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you want to learn more about negotiation and the pedagogy of teaching negotiation, consider taking one of the classes I offer through the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Bob Bordone. Let's keep negotiating together. Here comes literally all you need to know about negotiating skills and how to improve them. Click it.